Once upon a time, a father sent for his 3 sons and gave to the eldest a cock. So that's like a chicken, like a bird. To the second, a scythe, and that is like a staff with a, not like an axe, but with a large blade, and it's used for cleaving down like wheat. And that's the thing that you might see pictures of the Grim Reaper with this big stick with the blade over it. And to the third, a cat. Don't make me explain what a cat is. I am now old, said he. My end is approaching, and I would fain provide for you before I die. It's interesting. We don't even use that word. Money I have none, and what I give you seems of but little worth. It rests with yourselves alone to turn my gifts to good account. Only seek out a land where what you have is still unknown and your fortune is made. Okay. After the death of the father, the eldest set out with his cock. But wherever he went, in every town he saw from afar off a cock sitting upon the church steeple and turning round with the wind. Okay, so that's rather interesting. So it's like they'll have like little iron images of them up on top of buildings. In the villages, he always heard plenty of them crowing, and his bird was therefore nothing new. So there did not seem much chance of him making his fortune. At length, it happened that he came to an island where the people who lived there had never heard of a cock, and knew not even how to reckon the time. They knew, indeed, if it were morning or evening, but at night, if they lay awake, they had no means of knowing how time went. Behold, he said to them, what a noble animal is this! Oh, what a noble animal this is! How like a knight he is! He carries a bright red crest upon his head and spurs upon his heels. He crows 3 times every night at stated hours, and at the 3rd time the sun is about to rise. But this is not all. Sometimes he screams in broad daylight, and then you must take warning, for the weather is surely about to change. It's pretty straightforward to know when the sun is coming up. We have this thing called dawn, and even in pre-dawn we can see the sky lighting just a little bit. And I could explain why that happens because of the roundness of the earth, and you have clouds just gently illuminated by the sun even as it's over the horizon. But I mean, that would take a little bit of time, and I'd have to do a little bit of thinking. I think most people, we've been awake early enough that we know when it's going to be sunup, way ahead of time. This pleased the natives mightily. They kept awake one whole night and heard to their great joy how gloriously the cock called the hour at 2, 4, and 6 o'clock. Then they asked him whether the bird was for sale and how much he would sell it for. This doesn't seem very honest. Here I have this common thing. Do you want it? About as much gold as an ass can carry. So that's like a donkey. Remember our words. A fair price for such an animal, cried they with one voice, and they agreed to give him what he asked. When he returned home with his wealth, his brothers wondered greatly, and the second said, I will now set forth likewise, and see if I can turn my scythe to as good an account. So here we're actually kind of learning what these things are. So you learned what a cock is and what it does, what it's like. There did not seem, however, much likelihood of this. For go where he would, he was met by peasants who had as good scythes on their shoulders as he had. But at last, as good luck would have it, he came to an island where the people had never heard of a scythe. Okay, so when you're on an island, you don't really need a scythe, because it's got to be a really huge island to have like the kind of flatness and kind of plants that would grow something like wheat, I mean, maybe there's some other things. I suppose you could use it for cutting down corn or something weird like that. I'm not really sure how much variety you could use a scythe for, but if it's an island, it's going to be something like a sickle, which is a handheld little stick with a blade on it, and that's good for something like I suppose rice. But an island? It seems like a very strange thing to bring on an island. I guess that's why they've never heard of a scythe. Okay, so he came to an island where the people had never heard of a scythe. There, as soon as the corn was ripe, okay, so corn, I mentioned corn, they went into the fields and pulled it up, but this was very hard work and a great deal of it was lost. The man then set to work with his scythe, and he mowed down their whole crop so quickly that the people stood staring open-mouthed with wonder. They were willing to give him what he asked for such a marvelous thing, but he only took a horse laden with as much gold as it could carry. How much gold are they going to have on an island? Maybe they do a lot of trading? Maybe the corn is very valuable because other places don't have corn? I don't know. Now the third brother had a great longing to go and see what he could make of his cat. Now here's the thing. I mean, you've got three brothers, and they're pretty close, I hope. Because the one who came back, who sold his cock and has an ass full of gold, he came back to his brothers. So they're pretty close. So it really wouldn't matter if the second brother or the third brother had no success. I mean, so this guy with his cat, I'm okay if, like, I want him to keep his cat because I like cats. I don't want him, you shouldn't be selling a cat. It just seems wrong. Okay, so he set out, and at first it happened to him as it had to the others. So long as he kept upon the mainland, he met with no success. There were plenty of cats everywhere, indeed far too many, so that most of the young ones were... Give me a second. See, there's a reason why I flag these as not suitable for all audiences. Why does every story have to have something just grim? Grim, get it? Anyhow. Okay, there were plenty of cats everywhere, indeed far too many, so that most of the young ones were drowned in the water as soon as they came into the world. Moving right along. At last he passed over to an island where, as it chanced most luckily for him, nobody had ever seen a cat, and they were overrun with mice to such a degree that the little wretches danced upon the tables and chairs, whether the master of the house was at home or not. The people complained loudly of this grievance. The king knew not how to rid himself of them in his palace. In every corner mice were squeaking, and they gnawed everything that their teeth could lay hold of. Here was a fine field for puss. She soon began her chase, and had cleared 2 rooms in the twinkling of an eye. Maybe just chasing them off. The people then besought their king to buy the wonderful animal at any price, for the good of the public. The king willingly gave what was asked, a mule laden with gold and jewels, and thus the third brother returned home with a richer prize than each of the others. I forgot to scroll for you, sorry. Meantime, the cat feasted away upon the mice in the royal palace and devoured so many that there were no longer in any great numbers. At length, quite spent and tired with her work, she became extremely thirsty. So she stood still, drew up her head, and cried, well, that's a good spelling, meow, meow. We spell it very differently now. You know that different cultures will spell the sound a little differently? You should see what it's like in, there's a language called Standard Chinese. It's something like Mandarin. And they actually, they spell it in a way that makes, when you say it, it sounds like a cat. And we, in English, we say it a certain way, and cats don't really sound quite like that. Anyhow, that is an interesting spelling. But I know exactly how to say that word. The king gathered together all his subjects when they heard this strange cry, and many ran shrieking in a great fright out of the palace. But the king held a council to decide what was best to be done, and it was at length agreed to send a herald to the cat to warn her to leave the castle forthwith, or else force would be used to remove her. Or a broom, whatever. For, said the counselors, we would far more willingly put up with the mice, since we are used to that evil, than get rid of them at the risk of our lives. So they're that scared of the cat. A page accordingly went and asked the cat whether she was willing to quit the castle, but Puss, whose thirst became every moment more and more pressing, answered nothing but meow, meow. The page interpreted this to mean no, no, and therefore carried this answer to the king. Well, said the counselors, then we must try what force will do. So the guns were planted, and the palace was fired upon from all sides. When the fire reached the room where the cat was, she sprang out of the window and ran away. But the besiegers did not see her, and went on firing until the whole palace was burnt to the ground. I'm not really sure what lesson is trying to be told here. Okay. I'm glad I didn't remember that story. So that's dumb.